Minute. As the NBA reviews allegations of sexual assault against Mavericks owner Mark Cuban stemming from an alleged 2011 incident at a Portland nightclub, a security guard at that club told the Oregonian newspaper that Cuban appeared intoxicated and was, quote, gropey with women while taking pictures. Dallas head coach Rick Carlisle has voiced his support for Cuban while slamming the Tuesday article in the Willamette Week, telling USA Today, quote, I view that situation as a baseless and journalistically unethical rehashing of a proven non-event. You ever heard the term fake news? This is the most insidious form. For more on this, it's First Take right now.
Rick Carlisle has his owner's back, emphatically defending Mark Cuban. Max, are you okay with what he said?
Well, let's start with the most insidious form of fake news. No. The most insidious form of fake news is like lunatics propagating lies about politicians doing scandalous things out of pizza shops, you know, events that never existed. That's the most insidious kind of fake news. Fake news that you know, emanates from Russian troll factories and bots and stuff like that is really the most insidious kind of fake news. I take Rick Carlisle's meaning, though, that an accusation is then treated eventually as fact, or at least given coverage as though there's a good chance that it is. And I think that Rick Carlisle would likely agree that accusations must be taken very seriously. And I would understand where someone might say, look, this is one accusation by one person. This is not like others we know about where there are multiple accusations, all saying more or less the same thing from dozens of women, where at a certain point you go, what is this, some vast conspiracy? It's very unlikely that something wasn't going on here. So I get Rick Carlisle's meaning there, too. And I think it's admirable, at least on a personal level, that he has faith in his boss's behavior, that he's been around this guy long enough to think, I can't imagine him doing something like that, and I take him at his word. That's good, and I hope he's right. You don't want to think that something like that happened, period. And you wouldn't like to think that about Mark Cuban. I would say, though, that, I would say that given what has come out about the Mavericks culture, Mark Cuban is the head of that organization. He can't have it both ways, like he's a hands-on boss, knows what's going on, and all of a sudden, no, I had no idea what was going on. He has to give one of those things up, I think. And I think at this point it's wise to give up the idea that he's so involved with everything and knows everything that's going on, considering how hostile that culture was toward women. Given that as a backdrop, this accusation, any accusation needs to be taken seriously either, but this one in particular, to dismiss it as simply fake news, well, you know, I would hope that there weren't multiple other kind of similar accusations coming out, because then Rick Carlisle might feel differently about that point of view.
I think we're making a concerted effort to be careful at a time when we don't need to, or not at a time when we don't need to, but in a particular situation where that's not required. In the interest of full disclosure, I go back nearly 20 years with Rick Carlisle. I know Rick Carlisle. I know his lovely wife, Donna. I know what he stands for. And I happen to know, and his beautiful daughter as well. And I happen to know that there's no way on earth that Rick Carlisle would ever remotely condone misconduct on the part of anybody, including his boss, Mark Cuban, particularly when it comes to how women are being treated. Max, you have daughters. I have daughters. I've got a family full of women. I had the greatest mother, as far as I'm concerned, that ever lived, and I know how she raised me. And the reality is very, very clear. Any man that is guilty of sexually harassing, sexually assaulting, sexually violating a woman in any way needs to be dealt with a very, very heavy hand. And I know that I feel that way. I know that you feel that way. We obviously know Molly feels that way. Rick Carlisle is somebody that I can tell you right now on national television absolutely positively feels that way, at least the Rick Carlisle that I've known for nearly 20 years. Having said all of that, let's be very, very clear about what he's speaking against. He talked about journalistically unethical, and he talked about it rehashing a non-event. What is he alluding to here? This is an accusation that comes out 7 years later. It happened in 2011, supposedly, Was it pursued by prosecutors? No. Did the prosecutors say they had evidence? No. A matter of fact, they said they had evidence that it wasn't happening, that it didn't happen the way the accuser said it would. Then the accuser did not want to pursue. So if it wasn't pursued by the accuser, it's been dropped by prosecutors, it's never been an issue whatsoever, and it's 7 years later. Now Mark Cuban's name is on national TV being discussed because it's being associated with sexual assault of some kind. Rick Carlisle has a problem with that. And a lot of people would have a problem with that, particularly when it comes to somebody that they know, that they care about, whose character they believe is above something so insidious. And so we have to take that into consideration. If this was a situation where there was no knowledge, there was an accusation, the case was still open, things are still being investigated and pursued, that would be one thing. But if the case was dropped and the prosecutor said there's no evidence of this kind, not to mention the fact that there's evidence that it didn't happen, and then the person decides not to pursue the matter, we are looking at an individual right now, Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, is in the news with his name directly associated with sexual assault. And it's not about one of his employees and whether or not he may have dropped the ball by leaving them employed or something like that. No, this is him as a man, as an individual, being accused of such a thing based on what? And if Rick Carlisle, for him to be willing to take this position, I think it heightens our level of awareness in this respect, Molly. And I'll go to you, Molly.
Yeah.
You have a situation. I want to make sure that I'm very, very clear. We fully understand that there are a lot of women that are victimized, that for one reason or another can't come forward or don't feel compelled to come forward, and that does not mean they are not victims. They have been victimized, and as a result, and by and large, there are a number of cases that support them.
Yep.
But there are a few cases where there are men who are actually innocent, who do know how to act, and would never do something like that to a woman. And what do we say on behalf of those individuals who are accused possibly falsely, particularly when the support is coming from people who work with them, who know them, and believe in their character? I work with Max Kellerman every day. Somebody comes up to me and tells me that Max Kellerman is you know, he's been associated with assault or racism or something like that. Oh, we gonna stand up and Stephen A's gonna fight. I'm gonna step right in front of Max and I'm gonna fight for him because I know that that's that man's character. So why can't Rick Carlisle do the same for Mark Cuban, along with other people in the NBA community? Why can't we do that if we know Mark Cuban to be better than that?
Yeah, agree with everything you said there, especially about people being falsely accused and especially about victims often dropping allegations for a myriad of reasons. But one thing that I do want to point out is obviously Rick Carlisle wasn't there, but according to the witness who was the working security at the time, the I want to get all the facts straight. In this report on ESPN.com, Mark Cuban was really, really intoxicated. So sometimes people make terrible decisions. So he's slurring his words. He was asked to leave. They cut him off that night as well. So sometimes people don't always remember everything that happened. And also the security guard said he also witnessed what she had claimed happened, where she was inappropriately touched. They got into an interaction after the fact. So I just want to share those details as well. But I appreciate what you said. Yep.
A very important point from the prosecutor, quoting the prosecutor. Okay, it says here the prosecutors wrote, quote, "There is no evidence to corroborate the complainant's statement, and there is evidence contradicting the claim." That is from the prosecutor. We have to point that out.
Yep. I think we got all the details out, guys. Thank you. We will leave it on that note. Coming up, though, the Lakers are a possible destination for LeBron James next season, and Stephen A says Magic Johnson has some explaining to do if he can't make a big move. Plus, Baker Mayfield might be more well known for his antics on the field than his play. Don't miss what he said about NFL teams who might want to tone it down. Stay tuned.
I take